Okay, this dictation will be at 180. And we have Mr. Platt for the people and Mr. Talman for defense attorney. We will identify for you. I am Mr. Platt for the people.
I am the witness.
I am the court.
And I'm Mr. Talman for the defense.
And we begin with the court. For the record. People versus Paul Allen Fredrickson. This is the date set for jury trial on the penalty phase. We had 3 in limine matters that were taken under submission, specifically the testimony of Officer Ariano concerning a statement made by Mr. Mahoney a few hours after the arrest concerning, "It's too bad. All we wanted was his car. Too bad we had to beat the guy." And then the laughter that ensued by all 3 defendants. Is it Hernandez, Mahoney, and Fredrickson? The court is going to allow that Officer Ariano's testimony as it shows the defendant's state of mind at the time and total lack of remorse for the events that shortly preceded his arrest and shortly preceded his statement by several hours, but within a day. But as to the deputy's testimony concerning the joke by Mr. Mahoney some 8 months after saying that when we get out, we'll have to form a rock band and call us Cornfield and Slasher, and then the laughter by Mr. Fredrickson over that comment in the presence of the law enforcement officers, the court at this time is not going to allow that type of evidence on your case in chief and would reconsider it for any possible rebuttal. The joke, as morbid as it might be, I don't know if it really relates to the details of the death, though they talk about Cornfield and Slasher, and unless there's a real issue about present remorse, the court's not going to allow that evidence in the case in chief. As to the detective from San Bernardino who took the confession concerning the robbery from which the prosecution was not able to get the certified copy of the conviction on the basis of Robertson and out of an abundance of caution, the court is going to disallow the testimony without a corpus first having been established. And it's my understanding the victim is deceased at this time. She was an older lady that was the victim of that robbery, but we have no certified copy of the conviction. So I'm not going to allow the confession by Fredrickson concerning that particular 211 to be introduced without a corpus established.
Your Honor, I would ask that the court hold that subject to reconsideration for rebuttal as well. At this point in time, I don't know who the defense witnesses are, and if they are proper witnesses to ask about that robbery and have knowledge of it. I want to try to do that.
Well,
And before I do, obviously, I don't know who they are now, but at this point in time, I don't want to try to second guess.
that will be limited at this time to your case in chief.
That's fine.
But it would have to be a strong case to make that inconsistent or to rebut somebody's testimony before I'd let it in based upon Robertson.
I understand. He'll still be here, and if I can use him on rebuttal, I want to make use of it.
I think they were the only 3 motions I had under submission from yesterday. Is that correct? Is that correct, Mr. Platt?
I believe so, Your Honor.
Yeah, those 3 witnesses. We rolled on the other witnesses. Now I find out that you're going to call an additional witness, the mother of the victim.
No, I do not intend on calling her. She certainly is
A potential
a
witness,
potential witness, depending on how the other testimony comes out.
but she's a nurse,
She's a nurse.
and she saw her son's condition in the hospital.
Yes,
She wasn't present at the surgery, the reconstructive surgery of the son's face, was she?
she was involved, I believe, in some of the treatment that was taken or that was done. I do not expect to call her as a witness.
Okay.
But she does, I would guess, have knowledge through her expertise and profession of the injuries, as well as physically being there and seeing what had been done to her son.
That's the victim Foster?
Yes.
The 243 victim. If the bailiff will bring in, are there any other in limine matters that have to be discussed?
Not that I'm aware of.
Procedurally, what are we going to do now? We're going to put on what evidence the court has indicated is admissible, then reconvene tomorrow morning?
Well, we're going to put on the victim Foster from the 243 and the detective who took that statement, his confession as to the beating,
And Officer Ariano.
and Officer Ariano.
That's the only 3 I have now. You ruled I can't use 2.
Can't we start with your witnesses then?
Yes, I'm just wondering what the court wants to do.
Then we'll start with your witnesses, and you said you have a witness coming tomorrow at 11?
Yes, that's correct.
He has to fly into Sacramento?
Yeah.
He couldn't get up here any earlier?
We discussed it. That's going to be about as close as we can cut it with him. He's flying into Sacramento about 8:30, and I'm going to have to go up there and pick him up and bring him back down.
Well, you're going to have an investigator do that or somebody?
No?
You want to talk to him on the way down?
Yeah, so I figured if the plane is a little late or we're caught up in traffic or something, rather than having everybody waiting around.
We can make it 10:30 or 11, something like that. I can make Sacramento Airport in 50 minutes,
Well, you're a judge.
so you should be able to. You should be able to get down here by 10:30, going the speed limit.
It depends on whether the plane is late and how long it takes us
From where is he coming?
down in the desert.
Okay, let's bring in the jury, and I think we set the order of arguments. I don't know if we had the discussion off the record or on the record, but I left it up to you, and you don't want opening and rebuttal. You just want to go second?
My understanding is that Mr. Platt will proceed and I'll conclude.
Very good. Good morning. I'm sorry for the delay. I had some more things on my calendar than I anticipated this morning. This is the time set for the penalty phase of the trial. Where did Mr. Platt go?
He went to get the witness.
Oh, we better wait for Mr. Platt before any comments. I will be instructing you at the conclusion of this phase of the trial concerning your considerations of the evidence. So basically, one of the instructions will be that evidence of other criminal activity by the prosecution at this particular stage must be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. So I want you to keep that in mind. That's the same standard for a proof of other criminal activity at this particular stage. So, Mr. Platt, I think both attorneys informed the court that there was going to be no opening statement.
That's correct.
Very good. Mr. Platt, if you would call your first witness.
Call Mike Foster.
Mr. Foster, if you'd come forward, raise your right hand. Mr. Foster, if you'd take the witness chair, give us your full name and spell your name, please.
Michael John Foster, Foster.
Mike, if I could get you to keep your voice up as you talk, all right?
All right.
I want to direct your attention back to start with the year of 2010. Where were you living then?
29 Palms, California.
And had you recently moved there to that area?
Yeah, I moved there. I've only lived there 10 days.
In particular, on July 26th of 2010, you recall that day in particular?
Yes.
What day of the week was that? Do you remember?
Saturday.
Did you stay at home all day that Saturday on July 26th, 2010?
Yes.
Did you go somewhere that night?
Yes.
Where did you go?
I went to I guess it was called the Copa Bowling Alley.
Do you recall what time of day it was when you went down there?
I'd say 8 o'clock.
8 o'clock at night?
Yeah.
And you were still kind of new in town, is that right?
Yeah.
Did you go down there and meet some people?
I met a few people from going down there a few other times, and I was just trying to meet some new people in town.
Are you familiar with Paul Fredrickson?
Yes, I met him the night before.
The night before the 26th that we are talking about, is that right?
Yes.
Where did you meet Paul the night before the 26th?
I met him at the bowling alley. He was sitting on the side, sitting on his motorcycle.
Do you see Paul Fredrickson in court today?
Yes,
Would you point him out for me, please?
right over there.
The record will reflect the witness identified the defendant, Paul Allen Fredrickson.
When you went to the bowling alley on July 26th, did you see Paul Fredrickson that night?
Yes,
And about what time did you first see Paul?
9:15 approximately.
Did you have some conversation with him then?
Yes,
What did you guys do at 9:15 when you first met Paul there at the bowling alley?
we got on his motorcycle and went to the store and bought some rolling papers.
How old were you in 2010, July 26th, 2010? How old were you then?
15.
And you guys went down to the store and bought some rolling papers?
Yes,
What was that for?
so we could get high.
Is that for smoking some marijuana?
Yeah,
Did you have any marijuana?
no,
Did you smoke some marijuana that night?
yes.
Who with?
Paul,
When did that happen?
we took a ride, the night before when we were at the bowling alley. We were drinking some beer and a cop came and he started giving us the go around. And since I was new in town, he took Paul's license and he told me and Paul to meet him at the substation to get his license back. And we were going to get a ticket or something like that.
This was the day before?
Yes?
Did you go down to the substation like you were told to?
No, because I was new in town and I didn't want any trouble.
The night of the 26th now, how much marijuana did you smoke?
One joint.
And how much, did anybody else smoke any marijuana while you were there?
Paul,
And how much marijuana did Paul smoke?
we smoked one joint.
Okay. Was that one that you split between you?
Yes.
Where did that happen at? Was that still at the bowling alley?
No, I was new in town. It was dark. Since we didn't want to get in trouble by the police, he says, well, I know a good spot. Let's go there. I said, all right. I had some trust in him.
Did you leave the bowling alley?
Yes.
Where did you go to?
We started going down the road away from the bowling alley and across and then towards this golf course. And then we started on this sand road. And I could have sworn we went up this hill and we were sitting on a sand dune.
When you got to the location, you stopped at some point, is that right?
Yes.
When you got to where you stopped, were you still in town, in the city limits area?
Well, yes. Well, maybe we were about a mile from the city or, the city lights because I could see over the whole town. I could see the drive-in and everything like that.
Were there any buildings and lights and stuff around where you stopped at?
No, there was a few houses off to the back of us. There was just a few houses.
About how far away were they?
About a half mile or so.
From where you were, you could look down and look over the city, is that right?
Yeah, I remember seeing the drive-in playing. I remember that.
Do you remember how far away the city was? How far you'd driven out to where you were?
I'd say a good 2 miles from the bowling alley.
When you got to the area where you stopped at, what was the first thing you did?
Rolled a joint.
Who was out there besides yourself?
Me and Paul,
Anybody else?
we were sitting there and a van drove by.
Anybody get out and join you and Paul there?
No, they just drove off.
Okay. Did you smoke the joint that you guys rolled?
Yes,
About how long did that take?
I'd say maybe 10 minutes.
Okay, then what happened?
He said, do you want to drink some beer? And I said, all right. So he got on his motorcycle and took off to the store and got a 6-pack of Budweiser and came back.
Did you go with him to the store?
No,
How long was Paul gone?
I'd say 10 minutes.
What happened when Paul got back?
Well, he gave me a beer and he had a beer. He's about 10 feet to my left.
Were you guys standing up or sitting down?
We were sitting down.
Okay. After he gave you the beer, what was the next thing that happened?
I opened it and took a drink, and he was on my left-hand side about 10 feet over, and he came over. I thought he was going to come over and sit down and start talking, and he put his hand on my leg, and he asked me...
Which side was he on?
Let me stop you. Which side was he on?
On my right-hand side.
And he put his hand on your leg.
Yes.
Did he say anything?
He asked me if I'd ever made love to a guy before.
Did you say anything?
I said, what are you doing? I'm not into this,
Were you still sitting down at that point in time?
Yes,
Did you stay sitting down?
yes.
Okay, what was the first thing that happened after you said, what are you doing? I'm not into this.
I went like this.
All right. And then what happened?
That's it. That's all I remember.
What do you mean that's all you remember?
The next thing I knew, somebody was telling me it was Thursday and handed me a mirror.
All right. Were you still out there where you and Paul had been sitting?
No, I was in the hospital.
Okay, so the last thing you remember before walking up in the hospital is raising your I think you had your right arm up, is that right?
Yes.
Did you feel anything after that?
No.
Okay. Did you say anything after that?
No.
Okay. What kind of physical condition, what was your health before the night when you went out there on the hill with Paul?
Well, I was 6'1", maybe 180 pounds.
Did you have any physical injuries that night before going out there with Paul?
None whatsoever.
Anything wrong with your face?
Nothing.
Anything wrong with your nose?
Nothing.
Your eyes?
No.
The area around your jaws or anything like that?
Nothing at all.
Okay, when you woke up in the hospital, you were told it was Thursday. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have some physical injuries then?
Yes.
What types of physical injuries did you have?
Well, I looked in the mirror and my jaw only touched my teeth in one place. It was moved all the way over here.
Okay.
And my nose was pretty well pushed in and my eyes were swollen shut pretty much.
Any other injuries to your head?
I had stitches down from my nose going up and down and then across and then some stitches underneath here and some stitches right here and then stitches up here.
Any injuries to the back of your head?
Yes, I got I don't know how big a cut it was. There was no stitches though. It was pretty big though.
How long were you in the hospital?
3 weeks and 4 days, 3 or 4 days.
Were you in any kind of special treatment areas when you were in the hospital?
Yes, I was in intensive care
For how long?
for the first week and then I was put back in intensive care after surgery.
Now, I notice as you sit there, you've got what appears to be a scar on your neck there. Is that from a tracheotomy?
Yes, it is.
When did that happen?
After a 6-hour corrective surgery to reconstruct my face, my nasals were collapsed and they packed my nasals with all kinds of gauze and then they wired my mouth shut.
Was this while you were still in the hospital after waking up in the hospital on Thursday?
Yes, so I couldn't breathe, so they gave me a tracheotomy.
Okay, do you have any memory at all of what happened after you raised your hand or raised your arm after telling Paul you weren't into that kind of thing?
Once every long time, I see a motorcycle and myself standing up just for a second. I can't even remember it that well. I don't remember anything really.
You don't recall being struck at all or striking anybody?
No, I don't.
Thank you. I have nothing further of Mr. Foster, Your Honor.
Mr. Tallman?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Foster, I take it that at this time, I understand you're active in sports. You play basketball and so forth?
Yes.
All right. Do you no longer live at 29 Palms? Is that correct?
No, I moved away as soon as I got out of the hospital.
The night before, was that the first time that you had met Paul?
The night before, yes.
And that night, there was a lot of beer drinking and carousing and partying?
Not a lot.
Some.
Some.
Paul was a couple years older than you were at that time?
Yes.
The group that you were hanging around with, were they all older than you were?
I'd say they were about my age.
Okay, so somewhere between 15 and 18, in that range?
Yes.
Okay. Other than what we've talked about, are you aware of any reason that Paul would have been upset with you or anything such as that?
No, I'm totally lost on that.
You don't understand why it happened?
No explanation. I don't know why it happened.
And the only thing you did basically was just...
Try to make a new friend.
Right. And you were shrugging your shoulder to stop the advance. That's the only thing you did?
Yes.
And it was that simple act of rejection that apparently set everything off, as far as you're aware?
Yes.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Witness excused?
Your Honor, I've got one question that I thought I asked, but Detective Stewart wasn't sure. Mr. Foster, how long were you in the hospital totally?
Asked and answered. 3 weeks, 4 days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Witness excused?
Call Detective Dickus, Your Honor, if I could have just a second.